10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff, and the clock is starting.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And we don our ballet slippers and pirouette right into Kerbal Cast, episode 25, Homer to your mobile.
My ex-man
What's that?
his new
Oh,
girlfriend.
no.
She's like,
What
oh
did you
my
do?
God.
Just hit the button.
What is this doing?
Just hit the
Did
button.
you do this?
No.
What is she doing on our podcast? No,
Get it off.
go
Just get it
away. I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, and our CMP, Command Module Pilot.
Nostromo.
You put that song on there.
No,
I know
I did
you.
not.
Yes, you did.
I don't even know what it is.
You're a big fan of She Who Must Not Be Named.
Oh,
Coming
okay,
up in today's program, we'll talk about our progress in the game.
I didn't have my paper ready.
You didn't have your paper?
I was so distracted.
By She Who Must Not Be Named.
Dark Mushroom brings us Dark Matters.
We'll also do mission briefing, which we'll be reading your letters, and DK joins us with this week's Modders Minute.
And we're splashing around with this week's Shea Challenge.
Shea Challenge this week is going to immerse you in the ocean.
Oh, man, I have such bad luck with that thing. I don't know if
You'll
I'm
find
ready
out.
for that one.
You'll find out. We need to start out with an announcement. We are now on YouTube. Thanks to a user by the name of Askelon. He has been asking us for some time to post our podcast on YouTube. He is deaf, and he's a big fan of the game, and he's always wanted to enjoy the podcast. And YouTube has built-in speech recognition software,
Yeah,
so
they have,
it will
auto captioning.
Yeah, it'll automatically add closed captioning. And I have been trying to figure out, because you can't just post audio to YouTube.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of video, even if it's just a static image. But I had been trying to figure out how to do that. And he said to me, listen, I know how to do it. I just need your permission to do it. And so we created an account for him. And he's been uploading previous episodes of the podcast. And I went in. Have you looked at these yet?
No, not yet.
I went in. I was real curious to see how the closed captioning, what kind of a job it was doing.
Yeah.
And so I clicked on episode 1, and I happened to get, back in episode 1, I talked about how one of my highlights, one of the high points of my life was I got to meet and interview Jim Lovell. And I was telling that story. That was the section that I clicked on. And I was reading the closed captioning.
Oh,
now,
no.
I will say,
no.
considering the amount of crosstalk and considering the fact that we're throwing around a lot of terminology that isn't common.
Yeah, and made up words.
Yeah, it does a pretty good job.
Nice.
But
Uh-oh.
let's just say that we have our very own All Your Base or Belong to Us. I transcribed this. This is my Jim Lovell story from episode 1. Word for word, the closed captioning. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, quote. Jim Lovell was on Apollo 8, which was the first mission to ever leave. It was the first time human beings ever left the Earth and went to another body in space. So they went around the men, and they did it without the lunar module. So it's a good thing what happened on Apollo 13 didn't happen on Apollo 8. But that was a very risky mission going around the man with just one engine. But I remember meeting him, and that net kind Obama's contact high you can get. I was walking around for a week saying, Homer to your mobile. The real funny part was, I have a copy of the book, A Man on the Man. Buy and urge I can. Okay, well, Jim Lovell has written a book himself called Lost Man, which years the book that they based the movie Apollo 13 on. I get out this hardcover Man in the Man, and there's this little split second where I can see his baseball, where it's like, hey, dummy, that's not my book. That's the closed captioning. You're turning red.
They're gonna... Oh, man.
We're probably going to get kicked off for obscenities.
Yeah.
But in case you were wondering where the episode title came from, apparently after meeting Jim Lovell, I walked around for a week saying Homer to your mobile. Do you know what's weird? Do you know what the speech recognition software is trying to interpret with Homer to your mobile? I met Jim Lovell.
Oh.
Somehow or the other, I Met Jim Lovell sounds like Homer to your mobile.
You know what's funny is whenever that gets transcribed, you're just going to be saying Homer to your mobile over and over again. Homer to your mobile comes across as Homer to your mobile. And well, duh.
Well, duh. Yeah. And apparently I saw his baseball. And there's something called Obama's Contact High. I have no idea what that is supposed to be.
I don't know.
But anyway, if you want to...
honestly, that's better than episode 1 was.
I guess so. Yeah, that's true. Episode 1 was a little rough.
Your story was good, but that segment alone, that blows episode 1 out of the water.
Well, maybe we'll start getting a lot more downloads on episode 1 now or something. Who knows? But we are, thanks to Askelon, we are now on YouTube. The easiest way to go is just go to YouTube and just type in the search Kerbal Podcast, and boom, there we are.
Yep.
And the pictures that he uses, which I think is kind of cool, they're screenshots that I have been posting to Twitter.
Oh, really?
So it's there's a little bit of a disconnect because there's episode 1, which was 6 months ago, and yet there's a screen cap of something that I did like last weekend.
Yeah, it kind of stinks that we didn't start screen capping at the beginning or something.
Well, I didn't realize that anybody would want to see that.
Did we get it? We started like a Twitter around episode 3, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't there at the beginning.
I remember I was at the grocery store.
We don't see that far ahead.
Yeah. I was at the grocery store and you sent me I guess it was an email or a text or something, and it was like, hey, can you confirm the Twitter? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess we have a Twitter feed.
Yeah.
So, well, let's, again, thanks to Askelon.
That's really cool. So
that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work. But, I'm glad that we're able to do it. It's nice. He's a fan of Kerbal Space Program, and he wants to enjoy the podcast, and I'm glad that we have found a way for that to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's really great.
He deserves a lot of praise for all the hard work.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, let's go ahead and get into our progress report. Since I just read the long Jim Lovell man-on-the-man Obama Contact High story.
All I got to say is baseball. Anyway.
Why don't you go ahead and start? Your schedule has actually been a little bit better.
Well, it got alleviated a little bit. I mean, because of the Halloween weekend,
right.
I took some vacation time because there are a couple Halloween-themed like party games, and I get booked and I run them at people's houses and stuff for their Halloween parties. So, it's one step below professional clown, but I'm getting there, So, I mean, I still had things to do.
Would that be like rodeo clown?
Yeah, I still had things to do. Dude, that's dangerous. But
you got a purty mouth, boy.
They were at least fun things.
Right.
So I at least have that going for me. But yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of time. And I got some time to play the game, actually. So.
Okay.
Speaking of.
Yes.
I'm upset.
You're upset?
I'm upset. I'm upset at you, and I'm upset at everybody.
Okay. What exactly did we do, pray tell?
And part of it was because I didn't follow through with figuring out why I was so upset, but I'm upset. So you're like, guys, you just got to go and you got to get your science and you take it into the pod and then you leave your, descent stage and you return home with all your science.
Yes.
That's what I was told.
And?
You were partially right.
I was partially right?
Yeah. So I.
But that's what I do.
Luckily, I only had, I had all my saves staged. So I just went back to the save where that's the last thing I had done was land on the mun. Mm-hmm. So I go and I collect all my science, go up the ladder and I grab the goo here and I grab the goo there. Mm-hmm. And then I go up another ladder and I grab this goo and then I go and I grab things from each of my thermometers and I go and it says, you can't take this all in the command pod.
There's some that you can't.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I wasn't told that.
Ah, okay.
Nobody told me that.
I've got my goo canisters are on the side of my capsule.
See, mine weren't. So you can't.
Okay.
So it said, well, the thing is, it didn't say you can only take this much. Or it just said you have too much science. Like you can't store it in the pod. So instantly I was like, well, is there some kind of pod I'm supposed to have that stores more science? And so I don't know. It's
the amount of science. It's not okay. Because I've taken stuff. I've taken like goo science and gotten back in the capsule.
Yeah.
It's the total amount of science Is that what you're saying?
I'll get to it here in a second. So
you'll get to me in a second.
I got upset, and I thought I was cheated and lied to by my Kerbaling brethren, my brothers and sisters out there of Kerbal kind betrayed me. So I got upset. Then I Googled it.
Yeah, I can tell.
And so I Googled it, and you can't take more than one kind of a science.
Oh, that's what it is.
You can't take 2 goo science things up into the pod.
Oh, okay.
So I had 2 goo from the surface of the mun, and it was like, no, you have too much science. This was the thing, though. If it would have told me, if it would have brought up like a little pop-up and it said, you have these kinds of science, and this, like, and it shows you have 2 of this kind of science and 1 can't go. Then I'm like, okay, trash that one, we're good. But it just told me I had too much. But then I checked the pod, and it was like, you have 3 science stored, and I was like, or 3 research things stored. I was like, well, then what do I still have? And I checked my guy, and he had 1 goo, and I was like, oh. I was like,
you know what's interesting? We don't plan these, okay?
Yeah.
We don't plan these.
Yeah, I'm sure.
When we get to mission briefing, we just happen to have a letter that addresses what you're talking about.
We need to do mission briefing first, and then I need to go home and do whatever it is, and then come back. All right, seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
Wow.
We have a letter. We have a letter that actually talks about storing science.
Okay. I wish I would have known that. Like, it probably would help.
It's hilarious that, we do this. This happens all the time. Questions either come up and get answered in the same podcast without us planning it, or sometimes we answer the question and then ask the question.
It's funny, if you viewed time like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen,
exactly.
I would seem like the biggest moron in the world. It's like his answer's like 10 minutes ahead in the show, and he doesn't know it yet.
I for Halloween, I tried to go out in my Dr. Manhattan costume, but they wouldn't let me.
No.
Yeah. Apparently there's something about public nudity that I was like, but I'm blue. I painted myself blue.
Oh, you blew it.
Get your pervy butt back in there. It's like, but you don't perceive time the way I do. Your mind goes to dark places.
They perceive jail time in a very comparable
That's true.
way.
Yeah. We don't perceive jail time the same way.
Yeah, so I got that science, and I got it home.
I'm going to trade up from Janie Slater.
I started going back to the administration building. Like, if I was ever at a point where I wasn't going to like crash into something if I left that screen,
right,
I'd go back to the administration building, because while I was there, like while I was filling the one where you the multi-part contract where you orbit the moon,
right,
or you orbit the mun, land on the mun, plant a flag on the mun, and transmit science from all those areas too. While I was doing that, if I would have just come back, I would have missed an opportunity, because while I was doing all that, a contract opened for transmitting science near the mun, one for planting a flag on the mun, and then one on doing transmitting science from space around Kerbin.
So you're blaming us for something that worked out for you? Is that what you're saying?
No, that was the other thing. That was a separate thing. Yeah.
Okay,
I've moved on.
Okay.
I've moved on.
Well, I haven't.
I was expressing my hurt.
I'm still stinging from that rebuke.
Well, you deserve it. So, so all I did was, like, the moment I had all the science that I could pack into the command pod, I lifted off just a little bit, then transmitted science from space around the mun, even though I was like 20 feet off the ground.
Right.
And then took it up, did an orbit, finished the big mun contract, and I had the flag planted, so I got that one too. Which is funny, because he only has one flag, and I'd already planted a flag by the time I'd saved there. So I was like,
you can't do multiple flags?
No, you pick up your flag and you put it back down again.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Boy, Kerbal Space, I mean, the space agency is cheap.
Yeah, real cheap.
They only give you like one flag.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but the thing I was saying, the thing that kind of...
What do you mean you need another flag?
Well, whenever I was trying to go into that pod and I had that science, they're like, you have too much science. You're going to have to just dump some of it. And they didn't tell me what I was getting rid of, or why, or what, or how much. So I thought I had to get rid of all of it.
Oh.
So I just quit for the night. I was like, I'm done. No. I said no.
In disgust. Forget it.
But so I finished all those contracts, and I get home, and I unload all the science, and I ended up getting like 500 something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I used that
That's a good haul.
Unlock because I also have those science campaigns going. So like all the money, like the bank loads of money I was making off those contracts, all translated into science too. So I didn't really see that's the one weird thing about doing those strategies. You don't see how much science you get till you get home.
Oh, okay.
Or until if you obsessively check your science. Mm-hmm. So like, let's say you do a mission and you're collecting science on that mission going to the Mun, and you're also fulfilling contracts. Well, if you don't write down how much science you have whenever you launched, you don't really know how much you gained. You know how much you gained from each science thing, and you know you gain some every time you gain money. So I think it was around 500.
Doesn't it? But it shows you how much science you get when you recover your craft.
Yes, how much science you get from collecting data.
Right.
But I don't think it does it from
Oh,
your
I see what
strategy.
you're saying. Once it, okay.
Yeah, so strategy science happens when the contract
Once the
is completed.
accountants get a hold of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you get the money for completing a contract, it's translated, some of it's translated into science if you have that strategy.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kerbal accountants, in real life, accountants wear green, those green eye shades.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really change much for them.
What color do they wear?
Are you going to think hard about this one?
Apparently.
This is going to keep you up?
Yeah.
So, I remember where it was. So I get all that science collected,
right?
And I use that, and I unlock docking ports because I didn't have those,
right?
And I, just some other big Rokomax parts, and then I got the.
Isn't Rokomax like the Acme of the game?
I guess.
Yeah.
They're really big, cartoonishly huge parts. And then I got the nuclear engines, which I never had those.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't have a lot of power, but
no.
you get a lot of.
Oh yeah, the ISP rating on those things.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So,
although don't ever catch yourself falling back into the atmosphere when all you have is the atomic rocket motor. Because you will burn that thing at full power and just watch yourself tumble into the ocean.
Yeah, it softens the blow a little bit.
You need to be way out in the middle of nowhere for that to be.
Yeah.
For that to be any good.
So I decided those have a really good ISP, and so it's going to be really fuel efficient. And I'm going to work on. I was going to work on Rendezvous. Mm-hmm. So I sent up. I decided just for the first Rendezvous I was going to try to rescue. Kerbal from orbit.
Yeah, stranded Kerbal.
Yeah, so right. I built a contraption and a 2-seater, which is a mistake I made last time. And I have it to where
so you have a place where he can actually sit.
Yeah, I have it slightly smaller orbit than he does. Mm-hmm. And I have those little nuke engines, so I can make a lot of adjustments and play around with it until I find out what I want to do.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to since I'm slightly smaller than him, I know it'll take a long time. But
question: if is he ahead of you or behind you?
He's ahead.
Okay, then you need to be under him.
Yeah, I'm under him. Yeah, I'm under him. And he's ahead.
If you're behind and you want to gain, you need to be in a lower orbit.
So
if it's behind and you need it to gain on you, you need to be in a higher orbit.
Okay, so if right now where they're at, let's say it's two perfect circle orbits. One's just smaller than the other, and he's ahead.
Right.
He's ahead on the outside. Mm-hmm. Do I just time warp until it gets really close to each other?
Yeah,
or?
You can do that. You can do that, or you can create a maneuver node, and you can adjust that where it will, you can actually, because it'll show you if you select him as a target.
Yeah.
And then create a maneuver node. As you adjust your node, it'll show you the points. It shows you how far apart you are, what the separation distance is.
Yeah.
And you can mess around with your maneuver node and bring those two together. If he's in front of you, as long as you're under it, you're in good shape.
Because I made so many little adjustments just to get a slightly smaller orbit than Do you remember
your altitude?
He's so close. It's uncomfortably close to the atmosphere. So I'm
do you know
20,000 lower?
Do you know what else you can do in a situation like that? Because the whole reason I asked you his altitude is that if you are that low, obviously you can't go too much lower before the atmosphere starts dragging on you, and then that really throws everything out of whack. What you can do, create an apoapsis that goes way out. Let's say you're at, I'm just going to toss out a number. Let's say that you're at, at 70.
Yeah.
Okay. And you create an apoapsis that's 300. Okay. So you create this giant bulge kind of orbit, where the periapsis is down around 70 and the apoapsis is way up around 300.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is by you going way out, your relative speed to the other target, which is in a circle around Kerbin, you slow down considerably. And so what happens is, rather than you trying to catch up to it, because you've slowed down so much relative to your target, it actually catches up to you. And you can, and if you'll do this by creating a maneuver node, you can watch the two markers that show your separation. As you expand out your apoapsis, you'll see that they're coming together closer and closer. And it's because you're slowing yourself down relative to your target, which means it's going faster.
Okay.
And you can actually intersect that way. That's a way to get around low altitude.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you get below, I'm just going to toss out 70. If you get below 70, you start getting into danger of atmospheric drag pulling you down.
Okay, because I think he's like, we're really close to 70.
Yeah. If he's close to you and he's ahead of you, if you do that, then what happens is you slow yourself way down, and then he catches up to you. And depending on how far out you put your apoapsis, depends on how many orbits it takes for him to catch up to you.
Okay.
So does that make any sense? Does that help?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try it. If the
basically you're creating, instead of a circular orbit, a very
like oblong.
Yeah, a very extended oval orbit.
Yeah.
Where the apoapsis is, 3 or 4 times what the periapsis is.
Yeah. I don't know if the way I'm currently trying it doesn't work, I'll try that way.
Okay.
Because I also sent up 2 crafts. It's funny the way I built them. They look like little blowfish.
Yeah.
They have.
Oh, really?
Do
they expand? Do they like puff up?
Yeah. It's like the cockpit. There's the space plane cockpit, and it looks like a jet fighter.
Right.
Well, there's these like the second cockpit that can attach to the back of it, and it's a second seat that's a little bit higher.
The goose seat.
Yeah. So I have that as the only cockpit.
Okay.
And then I put the
second seat is the only cockpit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's flat on both ends.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah,
okay.
and on the front of it, I put a docking port.
That's actually a good idea.
So I have a docking port there, and then I have the body of it, and then I have a docking port on the back.
Right.
And then it has girders going out, which have attached engines and stuff, and that's what's piloting it. Like that's what's pulling it. And so it has the fuel in the center just as its own fuel source that it'll transfer with whatever ship docks.
You need to tweet out a picture. I want to see this.
It looks weird. It looks like Birdo from like the old Mario games.
Oh,
it's like it's this big cone mount. I'm like, rah. But docking
does it
ports,
make that sound?
Pretty soon it'll make.
Yeah. Hey, good luck transcribing that, YouTube.
Yeah. So the way you put docking ports on, they don't snap to the little green attachment globes. They just kind of go wherever you put them.
Right.
I don't know. That was just weird to me. I haven't had those yet.
Okay.
So like all this time, I'm talking like, eventually work on rendezvous. It's always I was just trying to rendezvous, but I didn't have a reason to do it because I didn't have docking ports. But
right.
Now that I have docking ports, I'm putting them on ships, and I was like, these just go anywhere. You can just put them on anything. So I originally had a command pod, and I was like,
yeah, but the more offset you are from the center point of your ship, the more difficult it is to dock. Because
Yeah.
I've seen people. I've seen. And I'm assuming these are players with way more skill than I have, but I've seen ships where they actually have docking ports on the side. So they actually
like they parallel park.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They parallel park. I mean, to me, having it on the center point of the ship is it just seems to save me a lot of grief.
I'm wondering with this one, since it's in that like pilot cockpit and it's right on the nose of it,
right?
If I could do it from the cockpit view because it's like right there.
Possibly.
So
sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
So I built 2 of them. They're identical and they're both up there. Now I may redo it because I didn't have the nuclear engines, so I may redo it with a set of nuclear engines on there because the amount of you use so little fuel. And most of the time you're making adjustments that are like less than 50 meters. So it's really easy to, it's like, I'm just not constantly wasting fuel left and right.
The only thing I will say is eyeballing can get you into trouble. Be sure that you place a lot of emphasis on your nav ball.
Yeah.
Make sure you select your target and you want your yellow circle, which is your direction of motion,
fit in the pink circle.
You want it to be, the target is a pink circle with a dot in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what you want is the dot on the nav ball, which is the point, which is the center point of your spacecraft.
Uh-huh.
You want that to be on the dot in the center of the target, and you want your yellow direction of motion to be around those two dots.
Yeah.
That is a perfectly aligned docking.
Okay. I mean,
That's what you want. And
in cockpit view, you can see the nav ball?
You can see the nav ball, yes.
Okay.
But, depending on, I've never used that cockpit, so I can't say what the view out of it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine that you're not going to be able to see.
Yeah, you won't be able to see it itself, but it will be a good indicator that if I can see it, I need to make some adjustments.
But I'm just saying, eyeballing can be deceptive.
Yeah.
Especially if you're coming at it from if you're looking at it from an angle and you don't realize it, they can look like they're perfectly aligned, and then you change your angle, and it's like your docking port is way off to the right.
Oh, yeah.
You see, whereas your nav ball will show you that regardless of what angle you're looking at. So that's all I'd say is just make sure that, definitely eyeball it, but place a heavy reliance on that nav ball.
Yeah.
Because the nav ball doesn't care what angle you're looking at.
Yeah.
That's always going to be the same.
Okay.
So it sounds like you've got a lot of progress in.
Yeah, I managed to get a lot this time.
Okay, cool.
I actually, had some time off. So
amazing what that's like, right?
The amount of it was so the conflict I had. I was like, man, I can sleep. I can just full out sleep. I don't have to worry about getting called in or anything.
Yeah.
But then I was like, but I get to be awake too.
Yeah.
I was like, which one do I want more of?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Isn't that is that's one of those things where it's like that you should be using the opportunity to get more sleep, but it's like it's fun time.
Yeah.
It's like, when I go to sleep, when I wake up, chances are I'm going to have to go to work or I'm going to have to do something not fun.
Yeah.
So there's that incentive. Well, the better thing would be to get the sleep.
Yeah.
But
I got more fun time if I don't.
But, I have so little fun time.
It's like I'd been pent up inside of into solitary confinement for months.
It's like somebody who's dieting all month and then just suddenly binges.
Yeah. No, I went off the rails.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, it was.
Oh, so that's what the tattoo is for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I wondered who Rosie was.
It's Biff and Nos forever.
Forever. Yeah. We were talking about rendezvous. I came up with a tip this week that this is a good place to toss it in. Typically, when you do refueling, docking, when you do rendezvous with the intent to refuel, typically what you're doing is you're docking a smaller, more maneuverable ship with a much larger tanker, which is much more stationary and much less maneuverable. Mm-hmm. Well, if you get into a situation where you're trying to dock two tankers together, what you've got two very large, very low maneuverability crafts that you're trying to put together.
Yeah.
And so, especially when you get a large ship like that, the RCS does not do a real good job of pushing you around.
Yeah.
You need the larger engines. Mm-hmm. Well, in order to utilize the larger engines properly, you have to constantly change the orientation of the ship itself. If you need a retrograde burn, you've got to spin it around. If you need a prograde burn, you got to spin it back around.
Yeah.
And considering how slow these things move, that can be very frustrating and very time consuming. I came up almost by accident, I came up with a way that actually kind of gets around that. What you do is when you dock two ships together, typically you point them at each other and then you make corrective burns to get them to where they're lined up and then the two docking ports touch. Okay?
Yeah.
So you've got one pointing one way and the other one pointing the opposite direction. Okay? What I discovered, if you're trying to dock two very large ships together, have them both pointing in the same direction. Okay? And the ship that you are trying to control, the main ship, have it be the one that's following. Have it be the one back. Okay? So if you have, in other words, your target needs to be in front of you. And the reason I say that is that as you maneuver your ship, the one that's in behind, mm-hmm. as you maneuver that and pick up speed, you can shift to the other craft that's in front and you can speed that one up to null out the relative speed between the two. So like if you add 10 meters per second doing a maneuver on your main ship, then you switch to the target ship and speed up by 10 meters per second, and that slows down the relative speed between the two. And then once you get close enough and you are lined up, instead of trying to line up to the prograde target, you line up to the retrograde target. Okay, once you're lined up, once the two are aligned, that's when you spin your target around to where the two ships are facing each other.
Oh, okay.
So there's a tip: if you're trying to dock two very low maneuverability craft, two ships that don't move that well, that's the way you can do it, is just point them in the same direction, and whatever changes you make to your pursuit vessel, I guess we'll call it that, whatever changes you make, you can null out with your target vessel.
Okay.
And then when it's time to actually dock, that's when you do the one spin around, and then you actually dock. So anyway, that's something that I stumbled across, and see if that works for you.
Yeah.
Last week I went to Ike and came back. This week I went to Dress and came back.
Where are those in relation to each other?
Dress is further out from Duna.
Oh, okay.
Dress is the next one out from Duna.
Okay.
It's not quite to Jewel. It's between Jewel and Duna.
Okay.
Okay. And it's the dwarf planet in the game.
Oh, okay.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Usually when you get within a certain distance, like for example, when you create an encounter with a planet, usually once you actually get into that encounter, because once the planet actually captures you and pulls you into the encounter, you know how it changes your direction?
Yeah.
Once you get there, typically you can see the planet. Well, Dress is so small that when you first enter its sphere of influence, you can't see it.
Really?
It is so small. I mean, it was like I had to get actually close to it before I could actually see it.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's the other thing. Dress, I didn't have that much trouble creating an encounter node, but the gravity on that thing is so slight because it is so small.
Yeah.
I had all kinds of problems having it capture me. Usually like with Duna or something, with Jewel, something that has huge amounts of gravity.
You just kind of swing in the neighborhood.
Once you get close enough,
it'll grab you.
It'll grab you, and you can, you don't have to slow down that much before it creates a circular orbit. With Dress, I honestly, I kept reloading. I kept, F9, 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 because I had to, the minute I got into the encounter, I had to start burning my engines to get slow enough to actually create an encounter.
To get anywhere near it.
Yeah. And I ended up with an orbit. I think it was 15 meters off the ground. I mean, it was like, honestly, I almost could have stuck my hand out the window and.
Like, what's the diameter of this thing?
Oh, it's real small, but I created a circular because I had expended so much fuel to be captured that I needed to. The higher you are in orbit, the more your lander has to come up to rendezvous.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was trying everything I could to conserve fuel. So what I did was I put myself as low as I could get to the surface of this thing, so that I wouldn't have that far to come up with my lander. Mm-hmm. I ended up still, by the time I got to the point where I was ready to land, my orbital craft, the one that was going to take me home, barely had any fuel left in it. Okay.
Isn't that funny?
Now, this was a ship that had taken me to Jewel and back and Duna and back.
You're going to something this tiny.
And I had plenty of fuel. And now all of a sudden I'm around this dwarf planet and I'm almost completely out of fuel. So I had to do the refueling, which is where the whole tanker thing came into play. I ended up, what I did was I had one tanker in orbit that was full. I put up another one, docked the two, transferred the fuel, filled up one good one basically, and then sent it to Dress. And that's where I used that as my return vessel. But that's where that whole tanker rendezvous thing came in. Difficulty trying to get those two to dock.
Yeah.
But dress
weird.
is really cool. I landed on it easily. I landed right on the edge of a crater. Mm-hmm. But it reminded me of Apollo 14. Alan Shepard was on Apollo 14, and they were trying to get to the top of an elevated hill or mountain. I can't remember what the it's been a while since I looked, but they were trying to get to the top of something, and they kept climbing and they kept climbing and they kept climbing, and it was like, are we there? And NASA kept saying, no, you're not there yet, keep going. And after a while they ran out of time, and they said, okay, you guys are going to have to come back. And that was considered a mission failure, that they weren't able to reach the top. When they went back and looked at pictures, they said, oh, actually, you guys were like right there. If you'd gone 20 yards more up over a rise, you would have been there. But we didn't know it at the time. Well, when I landed...
It's going to be rough.
Yeah, well, when I landed on the edge of this crater, I wanted to go up to the lip of the crater and look in. And it was the same thing. I kept climbing and I kept climbing and I kept going, where is the edge of this thing? And I finally went up and over. Mm-hmm. But that's when I really appreciated, because, when I heard about the Apollo 14 thing, at the time I thought to myself, how could they not know that they weren't close to the top? Well, I just had a situation where I kept climbing, and and it's like I'd go up and over a rise, and I'd go, okay, this is it. And I'd go up and over, and no, it was just a little dip, and there'd be more incline in front of me. So I'd climb some more, and I finally made it up and over. And I tweeted out a picture of me looking down into the canyon. Mm-hmm. And the distances are very deceptive. Because, from orbit, you can look down, and this thing is huge. But from your vantage point on the edge of it, it doesn't look like it's that far away. Like the far canyon wall does not look like it's that far away.
Yeah.
But that was an interesting little perspective I got. I had kind of a real life Apollo 14 simulation happen to me.
The lack of an atmosphere messes with your depth perception.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, the whole time I kept going, where's the top of this thing?
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
So anyway, that was interesting. It led I'll say this much, it led for a long walk back.
Yeah. So, the jetpack works pretty well there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, and I've gotten pretty good at that, but I still, once in a while, I'll judge something wrong, or I'll do something wrong, and I end up splattering him all over the surface.
Yeah.
And then of course it's F9 and
and you're back to where you were. So it's like, well, I guess I'll just walk it.
But that was fun. I had never been to Dress before.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think I'm trying to remember if I've been to Moho or not. I think I have. I think I orbited Moho once a long time ago.
I think I remember you saying something about orbiting it, but I don't think you said you'd been on it.
If I have been to Moho, then that means I've been to every planetary system in the game except for Elu. And so that's where I'm going to head next. Elu looks like it's going to be interesting because it has a very elongated oval orbit. It comes in real close and then it swings way out. It's a lot like, in our solar system, we have, 2 planets that actually swap places a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like Elu does the same thing. And, so I'm going to have to figure out
exactly when to catch it,
how to get to Elu.
Yeah.
But if I have been to Moho, then Elu is the last planet I have not been to. So
that's really cool.
And I should say planetary system, because I've been to the Joule system, but I have yet to land on anything there. Because you remember the last time, do you remember I was in orbit around Lathe? Mm-hmm. And then I think, what was it, 2.5 came out, and I redid the game and lost the guys or whatever. Uh-huh. I actually almost had that happen to me with Dress. I had been telling myself, I told you back in February I got a gaming laptop. Well, I had told myself that as soon as I could afford it, I was going to bump up the RAM in the game.
Yeah.
Well, I could afford it this week. So I took the laptop in to a computer store that I like to go to, and they had the right kind of RAM. Well, while I was there, the guy was going, if you really want to bump your system up, you need to get a solid state drive. And
Well, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, we can just clone it right. We can clone your current drive right over. Well, turns out you couldn't. And so it ended up being a lot longer of a process. And we almost ended up, I won't say losing data, but we almost got to a point where we almost wiped out some stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I came home and went to reload the game, it came up and it was like basically, save piles won't work because, certain mods haven't been installed and whatever. And I was like, you got to be kidding. I've got somebody standing on dress waiting for a ship to come get him.
Yeah.
And I'm about to lose.
I don't have time for this.
Yeah, I'm about to lose the save game. Because that's happened to me. Remember, that happened to me on Eve. That happened to me on Lathe. And it almost happened to me on Dress. I almost ended up losing. Because you remember I said that if I have guys on a planet for longer than a week, something always happens that causes the save game to get lost somehow or the other.
Yeah.
That almost happened. Fortunately, I was able to go in and go, okay, these are the mods I need to put in. And I was able to reload because I had to reload Steam and I had to reload the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was able to get everything back to where it was supposed to be so that I could go get my guys off the rest. So anyway, I almost lost them. One last thing. Oh, and then the other thing I was going to say, I did a manned mission, to Dress and back. Total science, 744.
Wow.
Well, you made the comment about your mission to the moon and back.
Yeah.
The amount of science you got was 500 and something.
Yeah, 400 to 500.
Yeah. It's like your mission to the moon and back garnered almost as much science as my mission to Dress and back.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, that was. But the other thing I did was, Eve is the graveyard for ships, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I decided since I am playing a new round of science, I decided that rather than beat my head against the wall and try and send a manned mission to Eve, I would send a probe.
Yeah.
So I sent a probe to Eve and landed, and I tweeted out pictures about that too, and I collected whatever science I could.
Do you use that round probe core?
Yeah. Okay. For this one, I did. Yes, because I haven't unlocked. There's the flat remote.
Yeah, it's like the little octagonal can thing.
Yeah. There's the little flat remote thing that you can put on there. I haven't unlocked that yet, but yeah, I used the little round probe thing.
Okay.
And I landed on Eve and I transmitted my science back. So this week, manned mission to and from Dress, one-way probe mission to Eve. And what I'm going to do next, I think I'm going to send a manned mission to Gilly and. So, maybe this week, maybe not, but Elu is definitely on my to-do agenda.
Oh, something that happened in my game it was crazy. I was in the orbital view, and I was just waiting for. I was time warped, and I was watching something happen.
Right.
An asteroid came close to the Mun, and it was trapped in the Mun's orbit, and you see it swing by Kerbin, then the Mun deflects it, but then it swung back around, and then the Mun deflected it again, and then eventually just launched off. It was the coolest thing to watch. He's like, it's coming, nope, and the Mun just kept grabbing it and tossing it back, and it kept trying to,
Was there an Aerosmith song playing?
That actually happened here, in real life. It happened a month or two, maybe longer ago. They showed a diagram of it came in and then the moon grabbed it and swung it around and it tried to come back and it swung it around and eventually it threw it out. Yeah.
Well, one last thing I will say, and this is another tip. When I was coming back from Dress, same thing. By the time I got back to the Kerbin system, I was down to just very little fuel. Okay. And no matter what I did, because I kept reloading and retrying, and no matter what I did, I could never slow down enough to get caught in Kerbin atmosphere in orbit. So what I ended up doing, if you find yourself coming in with a limited amount of fuel and you don't have enough to slow yourself down enough to get into a circular orbit, use what fuel you have to change your direction to where you're actually coming in right over the surface of your planet. And what happens is the surface, the atmosphere, and when I say close, I mean, 20 meters off the surface. Okay. that grabs you and it slows you down enough to bring you in for a landing. But when I came back from dress, I mean, I literally came into the Kerbal atmosphere with 0 in the tanks.
Wow.
So it was until I hit the atmosphere and it slowed me down enough to where I could separate the capsule and drop.
Yeah.
Until then, I was headed on the other way out.
Yeah.
I was just passing by. So yeah, if you don't have much fuel, rather than try and retro burn, just change your angle, change your direction of travel to where you're either intersecting the planet or coming in as close to the surface as you can, and the atmosphere will take care of the rest. Last thing.
Yeah.
You know how I've been tossing out $1 million ideas? I have one. You ready? Kerbal cards.
Wait, like the Steam trading cards you get when you
Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
I was
those
in Best Buy
exist.
the other day, and I saw they have, you can buy like the Steam gift cards.
Yeah.
Okay. Right next to the Steam gift cards at Best Buy, there are Minecraft cards. Where you buy it, and it's the cost of whatever the game is for the PC, obviously. And you buy it and it's got a code on there and you go home and you redeem it and you've got a copy of Minecraft.
Yeah.
Well, what about a Kerbal card that gives you some kind of code that you punch it into Steam and it gives you a copy of the game? It's got a picture of Kerbal on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're actually buying the game with the card, you're not buying like a $20 Steam gift card. You're buying a Kerbal card.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I thought it was going to be like for money in the game. I was like, I don't want to go that route.
Yeah. No. It's a Kerbal card. That way you could actually gift, like you could physically gift the game to somebody.
One of the things I wonder about, I mean, it's not going to be for a long time because the game's,
I still want my $1 million.
Yeah, it's not going to be for a while because the game's still, not completely done. On top of,
You can still buy it. You can still buy the game.
Yeah. I don't know.
Are you trying to take away my $1 million?
I'm just saying going into like a big corporate meeting or whatever, or being on the phone with like one of their...
Like Steam?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Steam
hey,
honchos?
We want to sell, vouchers to buy this game at a retail level. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, the game's not done yet, but it's really good. And they're like, well, no.
So now you're trying to poke holes in my $1 million idea.
Yeah, because I want to come up with it later when the game's done and get $2 million.
No,
See, you got to hold on to these ideas so they have value.
Oh, okay.
You just
I
hold
see.
on to them.
So you're saying my timing was off?
I'm just saying, shut up.
That reminds me. I last week I had a bad case of the motor mouth. I could not shut up. and it was like, I even figured it out, at one point in the podcast, I was like, hey, shut up.
Yeah.
I said it to myself. So anyway, I apologize to anyone last week who was yelling at their, who were yelling.
What's funny is
Biff, shut up.
It's funny because I was the one that was over caffeinated.
Really?
That was yeah. Like I drank some coffee and I was like, I didn't need that coffee. And I realized halfway through and I was like, my heart's gonna explode.
Yeah.
So, which I mean, really, if you listen to a lot of our shows, it's like you'll be talking and it's a lot of me going, yeah, oh yeah, and then I'll just make some little comment here and some more comment there. And whenever it's me talking, like you'll just jump in with stuff, and half the time I just keep talking.
You're like, I didn't hear you.
Yeah,
I don't care.
I'll just keep
shut
going.
up.
I'll just keep going. Like I'll let you have a couple, and then if it keeps going, and I still haven't finished my story. I'll just keep talking.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably the smart thing. Just ignore the motor mouth.
Either that or I pitch the next segment.
Yeah.
Hey, doesn't Dark Mushroom have something going?
Yeah, that's true. Well, we were, the last couple, we have really been fighting the clock when we've been doing the podcast.
Yeah.
You do a split shift, and what was happening was you would get off your shift. You'd come here. We had like an hour and a half or 2 hours. You'd run in, sit down. We would start recording.
Yeah.
And then, it'd be like you'd have 15 minutes to get back to work.
Yeah.
And that's when we would be done, and you'd get up and run back out the door.
Yeah, like I didn't even know that. Normally after we're like, okay, what'd you think of this segment or this segment? I was like, all right, see you later. Gotta get a sandwich, go to work.
Yeah, it's like when we got to the end of that, it was like, okay, I'm out of here. Bye.
Yeah, because I mean, both of the last ones, they were almost one take. You know, like we just like went through and if it's in there, it's in there.
Yeah, they were pretty much start to finish. They were.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned obviously Dark Mushroom and this week's Dark Matter, so let's let's move on to that.
Take it away, Dark Mushroom.
Just in case you thought your maneuvers were getting a little too easy, we bring you episode 9 of Dark Mushroom's Dark Matters. My name is Dark Mushroom, and this week we'll be dipping our toes in the pool of a concept so fundamental to making the very most of your long-range transfers, Michael Minovich spent the last few decades researching it just for you. The gravity assist. Now, I know some of you will be eager to start zipping your intrepid little Kermen and Kerwomen across the stars right away and just want a quick guide to some basic post-Kerbin flings. However, because understanding the nature and science behind gravity assist open up so many doors to both interplanetary and interstellar travel, we will lay the groundwork of the maneuver down now and get to some practical examples in the next episode. Let's talk about leapfrog. Biff and Nos, having lost their minds waiting for me to put together the last few weeks of Dark Matters, decide to go outside and play a game of leapfrog. The premise of the game is for Nos to run up to Biff, jump and push off of Biff's shoulders, and continue on his way. If Biff is stationary, not moving, Nos will have almost the same speed after the jump as he does before. Now let's imagine Biff doesn't want to play and instead begins to walk or even run away from Nos. Nos, however, determined by some mad desire, runs toward him no faster than before and pushes his way up and over Biff. Here, something fascinating happens. From Biff's perspective, Nos will be moving the same speed towards him before the jump as he does after the jump. Don't worry about that now. What's important is, from the perspective of an outside observer, Nos will be moving way faster than his approach since his forward speed will be combined with Biff's. That is, if Biff was moving 1 step a second and Nos traveled 2 steps a second to catch up, Nos' speed after the jump will be 3 steps a second after his comical leap. Though this example only deals with linear motion, it does sufficiently illustrate all the key concepts of a gravity assist. If a ship passes close enough to a body orbiting the sun, it can add the speed of the planet's orbit to its own. Some of you may be saying, "Hey Dark, wouldn't Biff be slowed down by Nos' leap?" The answer is absolutely. However, when we're dealing with things as small as spacecraft and as gigantic as celestial bodies, the relative loss of energy in the planet's orbit becomes negligible. Clearly, you shouldn't attempt to pass so close to a planet that you touch it, as in the example, but the closer you pass, the greater the effect of the gravity assist. Also, due to the Oberth effect, don't worry, we'll get to that the next time we discuss rocket design. You can get more gravity bang for your trajectory buck by timing your assist close to your periapsis, the highest velocity portion of your orbit. Now that you have a disturbing image in your head on how gravity assist works, feel free to contact me with complaints at darkmushroom87 on Twitter, or by emailing kerbalpodcast@gmail.com with the subject line, "Dark Matters Made Me Sick." And remember, in the ancient texts of Heracles, there is no easy way to the stars from the earth.
And that was taking a leap out of Dark Mushroom with Dark Matters.
Can I just say something for the record here?
Yeah.
Don't you ever try to leapfrog me. Never. You know, you would get the biggest gravity assist if you ever tried to leapfrog me, because I would be running so fast that by the time you actually got to me and leapt over me, you would get this huge boost in speed because I would be running as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, you see someone be like chasing you down.
Yeah. And also, Dark Mushroom, the gargantuan celestial body, considering that I was the celestial body in there, you're calling me fat? Is that what you were doing?
He's definitely calling you fat. You going to take that from him?
Well, he's obviously seen a picture of me.
I've
told you, Jabba the Hutt is my body role model. So, but anyway, I'm kidding. Thank you very much, Dark Mushroom. This week's Dark Matters. We missed him last week. That's what he was talking about. But he's back this week talking about gravity assist. So you want to move on and let's go to our mission briefing?
Yeah, you go ahead and go first.
Okay, mission briefing. Obviously, it's where we talk about Kerbal news if we have it, and we read your letters. And we'll start out with this one from Amy K. She says, "Hi guys. Listening to the letter from FIT Orion, I thought I'd recommend a mod I play with if you can pass this on called MKS. Modular Orbital Colonization with a K, system. It's an extremely well done, realistic colony building mod that is worth him checking out and may be exactly what he's looking for."
Okay, this one comes from Death Saber. "Hi, idiots."
Remember I said last week?
Yeah, it's like somebody's going to say,
hey, hi, idiots.
Thanks for reading my mail last time. It's episode 22, I think. Your show is great, and I look forward to it every week. You should make a point of asking at least one question every episode. I didn't really have anything to comment on last episode, but maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. I've made a habit of listening to Kerbal Cast in the car on my way home. Don't worry, haven't crashed yet. Actually, we used to do a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that question for a while, and we'd get a response, like we'd have a question like, what do you think of this, or what do you think of this? I remember the episode where we stopped.
Yeah.
It was that we had some question, but that was the same episode where we started talking about mod statistics.
Right.
And the next episode, we got like 10 letters in on mod statistics, and I think one person like mentioned the question like once.
Yeah.
And so we're like, how about we just
stop doing that?
Yeah, like not do contrived questions, but
yeah.
Every now
we kind of gauge what you like and don't like on letters and comments.
Yeah, so if you really like something, write in and let us know. But one thing that has happened is questions have sort of shown up in our progress reports because we're like, so how do you do that?
Yeah,
so.
That's
but
happened.
I mean, sometimes we'll have questions. If we ever do, we'll definitely put them out. We'll probably put them out around the Shea Challenge if we have anything really weird we want to ask.
Cool.
Anyway, on to my comments on today's episode. Quite a bit to comment on today. Hey, Biff, shut up and let him talk. He says, kind of joking, but kind of serious.
Yeah, seriously, I had motor mouth so bad last week.
In here, he says, I think jetpack is the E key by default. I can't see the keyboard from here, but I'm pretty sure that's rotation on the nav ball.
Yeah, I think when I reinstalled...
It was R.
Yeah, when I reinstalled, it said R.
Yeah,
because you remember last week I was saying that 5 was the default key.
Uh-huh.
I had assigned the 5 so long ago.
Yeah, that you forgot.
That I had forgotten that I had done that. There's a couple of changes. Anytime I install Kerbal, reinstall Kerbal, I change the 5 key on the number pad. Turns on and off my jetpack in addition to the default key. But the other change that I make as well, on the number pad, 9 is throttle up and 3 is throttle down. Oh. So that way, I've got my left hand on the WASD keys.
Oh, okay.
And I've got my right hand on the number pad.
That makes sense.
And I can increase or decrease my engine throttle with the right hand.
Not bad.
That's why I remapped those keys.
Okay.
Please continue.
Unmudded, all the brakes do is for gear and for rover wheels. Okay, yeah, I was asking that question.
We had a question about brakes.
However, with some mods, you get air brakes, like on a real-world plane. Those are also controlled with that button, and you can also hold the B key to apply brakes if you just want to apply brakes briefly, as opposed to clicking on the button that toggles it on or off, kind of like a emergency brake.
Right.
Air intakes don't deliver air to the jet engines symmetrically, so when you get up to high altitude, one jet engine will get less oxygen than the other. This has been the case for ages. Generally, that's the point you want to shut down your jets and activate your rockets. If you want to push things, you can right-click on the engine that's getting more thrust and trim the max thrust to balance things. The extra percentage of science you get from the lab only helps for science you transmit. You don't get any extra science when recovering. As to the exploding on the launch pad, it is a size thing. If the weight of the craft exceeds the strength of your engine that it's sitting on, that's when you explode.
Hey, he's calling me fat, too.
Fly safe, Death Saber.
Okay. Well, we move on. This comes to us from Mittenpo. And you remember I said during the mission briefing that we had a letter that talks about your...
Yeah, and he said on their Twitter also, he's like, hey, I got a double mention.
Okay, this is it. You were talking about saving science. This is the letter that talks about that. Okay, this is from Mittenpo. He says, after last week's successful trip to Minmus, I did some research by reading on the Kerbal community and wiki. The most benefiting method of getting science is to salvage the craft loaded with observations data rather than transmitting them, which I did last week. So, this week I managed to get a green light to use my whole Saturday to play Kerbal after waking up early and do all my house chores. Thanks, honey. Another trip to Minmus, but this time I built an orbital station with a good amount of fuel so that I could refuel the small lander after retrieving science from the different biomes. Instead of bringing back every single goo canister to Kerbin, I stored all data on the mobile processing lab, which has infinite capacity of data storage. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes, it does. I managed to harvest and store 100 data from the green deformed cupcake. also known as Minmus.
Yeah.
It was time to go home. Way back worked as a charm. Only needed 230 delta V to get into Kerbal SOI, Sphere of Influence, and aero brake until getting a nice plane orbit. I did not encounter any problems, but the moment before I landed, I accidentally hit Z instead of X. This made my lander stuffed with 100 samples tip over.
No.
I can't remember the last time I screamed so loud in my entire life. Luckily, nothing exploded. I guess that's the one downside to the Z key.
Yeah.
You remember I was talking about how much I wanted to have a full throttle key?
Uh-huh.
I guess...
You get hooked on it. Because I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I just need a little bit of Z,
Yeah,
ZX,
yeah.
ZX, just to get like these little boosts.
Do you know what I
It
do
was way too
sometimes
much.
when I'm in when I'm trying to dock? You switch between orbital mode and docking mode. Okay, to use your RCS keys. Occasionally, I'll still be in docking mode and not realize it, and I'll reach over. No, I'm sorry. I'll think I'm in RCS mode, and I'm not. And I'll reach over and I'll use, it's the control and shift key.
Yeah, on the left side.
Yeah, that raises or lowers, depending on how you're lined up, but that raises or lowers you. Well, if you're not in RCS mode, if you're not in docking mode, that throttles you up. And there have been times when I've been like, nose to nose, just making tiny little tweaks so that I can, just kiss the two docking ports together.
And
I'll reach over and I'll hit that, and all of a sudden I'm like at full throttle, just. Again, that's where I compliment Squad on your new explosion effects.
Yeah.
I've seen them on occasion when I didn't want to. Let's see, where were we? Okay, luckily nothing exploded. Salvage and back to Space Center. The result, oh good Lord, I feel like a slacker now. The result was 3,330 science points. Fantastic. Next time I will squeeze out every drop of science with the new seismic and gravioli sensors. Ever thought how amazing this game is? I'm so totally happy with it, and it's still in alpha. Can't wait for the upcoming Scope Complete 090. Happy Kerbaling, Mitten Poe.
This one comes from Brian T. Suggestions for getting off Eve efficiently. I stay out too late, got nothing on my brain. That's what people say. That's what people say.
Wait a minute.
I go on too many dates, chuckle, but I can't make them stay. At least that's what people say. That's what people say. But I keep on cruising, can't stop, won't stop moving. It's like I got this music in my mind saying it's going to be all right.
No, it's not.
Because the player's going to play, and the hater's gonna hate. Baby, I'm just going to shake. I shake it off. Heartbreaker's going to break. And the faker's going to fake.
Can I leave?
Baby, I'm just going to shake. I shake it off. I don't think he's going to get to that Eve part.
Will you stop?
There's a whole nother page of this.
Yeah. You know what gets me is all the little noises and squeaks and everything is in there. So I don't think that he went online and got the lyrics. I think he actually sat and transcribed the song.
That's dedication. Brian T., I commend you on this.
Dedication is not the word I would use. Yeah, I mentioned in the last episode how much I cannot stand the music of She Who Must Not Be Named, and how there's a new album out, and no matter what I do, I cannot get away from it. Okay? I can't turn on the TV. I can't go into a store. I can't go anywhere without this stupid song playing. And it got into my head, and it has been playing on a nonstop loop for weeks now. And so we get an email, and it says, tips for getting off Eve.
And you're like, yeah.
And I was like, all right. And I click on it, and I start reading. And I'm going, these aren't tips on how to get off Eve.
That was clever, though. That was really clever.
I was ringing the dinner bell.
Okay, so you got anything?
Yeah, the haters are going to hate.
Yeah.
Hey, all I'm going to say is this.
Hey, just shake it off, man. Just shake
it off.
Yeah, just shake it off.
All I'm going to say is this. For those who stay to the very, very end of today's program, there's a little something for you. Moving on. Letter from Jamie T.
I don't think I want to stay.
Stay. I was listening to your bit in episode 24 about space stations, and I'd like to give this technically would be, 2 cents on the subject, but the pound sign is here, so I want to give my 2 pounds on the subject. I assume that's it, or it's probably pence
Or 2 funds.
What is that? Can you see that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it 2 pounds? Or?
Yeah, I think it's 2 pounds.
All right. All right. Here's a question for our listeners, our UK listeners. I have a pound sign, a 0, a period, a 0, and a 2. Is that 2 pounds? That's not.
But no, wait, what were you showing me?
I was showing you. It says I would like to give you and what it would
2 pence.
Is it 2 pence? Is that what it is? Okay, I knew I was reading that wrong. Okay, okay, yeah, because to me that would be cents, but it's pence.
Or maybe
okay.
it's 2 quid. I don't know.
2 quid. Somebody please tell us. It's the pound sign 0.02. What is that? I want to give you my 2 cents on the subject, or whatever it is in the UK. What I normally do when I have to build a space station for fine print, remember that mod, is send up the station itself first with no crew and a probe core in control, then send the crew up separately, similar to what they do with real stations like Skylab or the ISS. That way, if something goes wrong, I don't risk losing my Kerbals. Hope that helps. And the sign-off is, stay out of the shadows. This is a reference to, do you remember last week I said that for the very first time, I created a space station that actually had escape pods?
Yeah.
And I said that when I launched it, rather than have the Kerbals sitting inside the space station, I put them in the escape pods.
Uh-huh.
And he was saying that another option is just put the thing up in orbit and then bring them up later.
Yeah.
Which I wrote him back and I said I was under the impression that caring about the well-being of your Kerbals was against the rules of the game. So anyway, what do you have?
This one comes from Crater. Hi, Biff Noss. I've just finished listening to episode 24, and I wanted to throw some comments on stuff that came up with it. When Biff was trying to land on Ike and going at 13 meters a second, he probably had his velocity meter set to orbital velocity instead of surface velocity, which would mean that he and the surface were moving sideways at that rate.
Do you remember I made the comment that coming down on Ike, that no matter what I did, I couldn't get under 13 meters a second? I'm not sure if I was on the orbital or not. You can toggle
it between them and to target relative velocity if you have a target set by clicking on the velocity indicator at the top of the nav ball. FIT Orion wrote into you saying that he was hoping to see launch pads on other worlds more than deep space refueling, as refueling already had a mod for it. I'm happy to be able to tell him that if he looks for a mod called Extraplanetary Launch Pads, one of his dreams will come true. It allows you to create launch pads on other worlds or even orbital construction stations where you can build and launch craft that would never make it off of Kerbin. So thanks for another great episode, and I hope Nas's work schedule slows down too. Me too. Yep. And remember, there is no problem in life so big that you cannot put it into orbit with enough boosters.
This is from Fooly Goofy. Hello, gents. I finally caught up. What?
I wonder if that's like Fooly Cooly, like the anime.
Fooly Cooly?
Yeah.
Fooly Goofy?
Fooly Goofy.
Garsh. Hello, gents. I finally caught up to the latest podcast, episode 24. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet, since now I don't have you guys on demand anymore. When I found your podcast, you were on podcast 18, so I started listening from podcast 1, and there would be days when I would finish one podcast and start another. Now my dosage is limited to once a week, and then there's a frowny face emoticon. You know, it's funny. People are binge watching us.
Yeah. A lot of people discovered us.
This is how I felt with Breaking Bad, because I binge watched like all 4 seasons on Netflix, and then I had to do like one at a time, the last ones.
Well, we got a lot of new listeners around the time Max Maps was on the show.
Yeah.
And so we had all these people who were like, oh, I didn't know about this. And so they binged listened to everything we had, and then they're up to this point, they're like, you know, whenever you start off like that, you're like, as soon as I want another, it's right there. Yeah. And they're like, now I gotta wait a week.
So I still get occasionally on Twitter or through Reddit, somebody will, somebody will post and they'll go, a Kerbal Podcast? I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, if you're one of those people, welcome.
Yes, welcome. And we apologize for episode 1.
I don't think I've listened to it since episode 3.
Yeah.
You know, so
well, I listened to a little bit of it when I was transcribing the closed captioning.
The man on the man.
Yeah, because I was going, what? What am I saying?
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, these are, he's got headlines for different sections here. Returning the favor. Here's $1 million idea. Have you guys ever considered having a donate button on the website? I'm sure a handful of us listeners will donate something from time to time. Perhaps we will not make you rich, but at least it may help to cover the cost of preparing fuel, new equipment, etc.
I don't know. We sort of bounced the idea back and forth with some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's to cover server costs.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have a few ideas that we may be trying soon because eventually we're going to hit our server limit.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to, increase the amount that we have to spend in order to keep it running. But we have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
We'll burn that bridge when we get there.
We'll burn it.
Yeah.
I think you're supposed to cross it when you get to it. That way you can go back over it. Let's see. Okay, next one. My KSP Genesis. I started playing KSP in March 2014, but my computer wouldn't run it properly, so I put it aside. Then in August, I got a new PC to play the latest memory-hungry games at full settings, and for one of those mysteries of life, I said, hey, look, KSP, let me run it, and after lunch, I'll test the new computer with some heavy games. Well, up to this day, I have not played any other games other than KSP, and a smiley face emoticon. My biggest challenge on KSP was the start, getting to understand how things work, creating nodes, and building the instincts. In the end, once I had the basics of the user interface and what each part could do and understanding the instrumentation, everything else turned out okay. Not easy at times, but not frustrating either. There was a game I played before which introduced me to all the concept of spaceflight, Orbiter Sim. Okay, have you ever played Orbiter?
No.
Cool game. If you don't know what you're doing, though, because, I remember when I first loaded it, I was like, all right, a space sim. And then it was like, I was like all over the place. I was going, this doesn't handle like Star Trek. So, let's see. So he used the orbital sim. So KSP really turned out to be a relaxing walk on the mun. How I play the game. In my KSP dimension, I document each mission date, crew, objective, and results. After 71 missions, you can see how each Kerbal have been building a career, and some of them a specialty. Anytime I lose one, it breaks my heart, so I'm always extra careful. Recruiting is not just at random. Mr. Kerbin may make it to the astronaut center, but the courage level must be greater than 60% and stupidity below 40%. Then your first mission is with a partner like Jeb, Bob, or Bill. No solo missions or leadership roles yet after a few missions. I plan my mission and run a few simulations and tests where I build my craft and test the staging and check out that all the parts needed for the mission are in and okay. Then revert, do modifications as needed, and repeat until I'm satisfied with the craft. Once I feel confident about the craft and plan of action, I say, this is it, and time accelerate to the launch window and launch the mission. From here, anything that happens, happens. There is no reverting at this point. Ooh, he's living dangerous.
Yeah.
Out of the 71 missions there have been 6 accidents and 4 deaths. The team has been to all the biomes on Kerbal, Mun, and Minmus. There are 2 probes heading to Duna, another to Jewel. A space station around Kerbal, and we are preparing for the next challenge, which is building a base on the Mun. Recommendations for squad. Have the Kerbals discover a hose, because refueling once you're landed next to another craft or base is not possible. For example, if you have a base on the Mun and a craft needs fuel, and you have a tank a few meters away, if you want to transfer fuel, you will have to get both craft in orbit and dock them. Why complicate things when a hose will be a simple solution to transfer fuel between landed crafts? That's an interesting idea. I never really thought of that. Past episodes. In the past, you guys mentioned music you listen to while playing. Go ahead. Say it.
I don't know.
I know you want to.
Actually, I'm not. They haven't come out with anything recently, so I'm listening to some other stuff right now. But I still appreciate them for what they.
Who hasn't come out with anything recently?
Diarrhea Planet.
There you go. You were just It's like you leaned in because
Yeah.
you just wanted to say that. Thank you for the recommendation on the soundtracks for Solaris and Gravity. Mm-hmm. Remember, I recommended Solaris and you recommended Gravity, which, by the way, good.
It's a good soundtrack.
Yeah, it is very good. Some of the songs from the K-Pax movie soundtrack are good also.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for keeping, but I digress. Wrapping it up. I'm sure you guys heard the saying, no words to describe it. Well, I feel the same way when it comes to describing how grateful I feel for your podcast. Oh, that was nice. Thank you. Please keep up the awesome work. His sign-off. To the Mun and beyond. Greetings from Florida. Fooly Goofy. And our last letter.
Okay, Nos and Biff. Sorry to comment on this, but I have to.
Uh-oh.
Taylor Swift's songs aren't musically poor. The fact that it gets stuck in your head after one listen proves that it is, in fact, very well done. The songs are popular because they are catchy, clean, and everyone can connect to them in one way or another. Personally, I do not like pop music, and it annoys me to no end that her songs are so overplayed, but I can appreciate them as well-crafted pieces. It's not bad music, even if you don't like it. This distinction is something that is often missed, and as a music buff, I believe it is an important one to make.
This is Run, Phil, Run?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to call him on this, because I know what he's doing.
What?
I don't buy it. I'm sorry, but I know what you're up to, Phil.
What's Phil up to?
Okay. Phil is worried that she who must not be named is finally going to get her army of minions together, and they are going to take over the world, okay?
Uh-huh.
And the first thing they're going to do is have purges, and they're going to have kangaroo courts, and people like me who dared to criticize, and all of her ex-boyfriends are all going to get hauled in front of these kangaroo courts. And Phil is trying to make sure that when that happens, that he can stand up and go, hey, I tried to set him right. You can't be mean to me.
How much do you think about this?
More than I should. That's what drives me nuts. I can't get this stuff out of my brain.
Because it's like the song is not stuck. You're stuck on some weird like conspiracy theory of a concept that's going on.
Do you know what it is? Have you ever
a problem?
Found
It's a problem. That's what it is.
Oh, trust me, I'm well aware of that. Now, have you ever had like when a movie comes out or something, and it's like everybody likes it but you?
Yeah.
And you can't understand for the life of you why something that in your mind is so mediocre is so popular. It's almost like it's like a problem. It's like a question that my brain can't answer.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I hear this stuff and I go, it's so mediocre. Why do so many people like it? And then my brain just starts chewing on that. And that's why I can't let it go. So, but I know what you're up to, Phil. You're worried about the kangaroo courts. It's not going to say, you know what, Phil? When they haul me in front of the kangaroo courts.
What's a kangaroo court?
You don't know what a kangaroo court is?
No, I don't know what a kangaroo. And right now I'm just picturing a courtroom with a bunch of kangaroos in it.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and they're in Australia.
On Kerbal related
what they
things,
do is her minions will drag you to Australia.
Am I the only...
The judge will be a kangaroo with a wig on.
Yeah.
And the judge's robes. And he'll jump up and down, and they'll convict you. It's a kangaroo court.
On Phil's letter on Kerbal related things, am I the only one who was pleasantly surprised to discover that Kerbals remove their helmets when they EVA at Kerbin? Oh, I didn't know that. Is that new?
I don't know.
Oh.
I've never noticed that.
I'll have to check that because I don't remember that. I guess that was. I guess that must be new. I also have a request for Dark Mushroom too. What are some little-known keyboard shortcuts or other controls? For example, I just discovered the little plus and minus buttons when right-clicking a maneuver node, which, according to the wiki, the right plus button will move the maneuver to the next subsequent orbit, and the left minus button will move it to the previous one.
I'm going to have to check that out because I'm not sure I quite understand what he's saying.
You know, he may just be messing with us.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, you know, this whole letter could be like opposite day.
Yeah,
that's
true.
And he's like,
that's
he doesn't
true.
support Taylor Swift. They keep their helmets on, and none of this stuff exists. Are there more hidden tools like this for maneuvers or in the vehicle assembly building? Fly safe, Phil. P.S. The recent Antares rocket's rapid unplanned disassembly on the launch pad reminded me all too well of my KSP career. I bet they forgot to double-check their staging.
That's an interesting way to describe what happened, the rapid deconstruction, also known as the explosion. Did you see the number of tweets and things where people were going, oh, should have hit the F9 key?
Yeah.
I guess if you play Kerbal, you get that kind of twisted sense of humor. So that's funny. That last letter from Run Phil Run, and thank you very much. Okay, let's move on. Time now for this week's Modders Minute with DK.
Sometimes mods are done so well that the game developers realize that they can't really do much better at a certain feature than the modder did. Such is the case with this week's mod, Fine Print, which Squad has announced will be adapted for the next update and the beginning of beta. Fine Print is all about contracts, and it more than doubles the amount included in version 0.25, and sometimes these contracts have side objectives that further increase the variety. The stock contracts can get pretty monotonous pretty quickly. Well, this is where Fine Print comes along to mix things up and make you retrieve an asteroid, build an orbital station or planetary base, conduct an aerial survey, deploy a satellite, or follow waypoints with a rover, all of which can get pretty challenging. One of what I think is the best features of this mod is that it will actually give you a graphic representation of what your objective is. You get to see the planned orbital path of your satellite, or where you need to drive around to with your rover. And this is a mod that is going to be stocked with the next update, so you have a chance to play future vanilla should you want to.
All right, thank you. Again, Modders Minute from DK. Don't forget you can find him on Twitch TV, Declarations, DK Lorations, or every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, you can find him on KSP TV. Now it's time for the Shea Challenge. And what do we have? Nas has got it.
Okay, so this week's Shea Challenge. For my next challenge, I've decided to stay on Kerbin, and more specifically, the ocean. That's right, it's time to take to the sea with boats. It's time to add to your list of bases with a floating base equipped with the following: 4 docking ports of various sizes, a lookout tower, solar array/power station, able to hold 10 Kerbals, a lot of fuel, and something to make your floating base unique. Just to help your boats float, I recommend using short stilts with radial air intakes on the bottom. They have the highest impact tolerance. All hail the Kraken. From Shea.
I know we've talked about this before, but trying to get something to survive being on the water.
It's like everything's made of like water-soluble glue. It's
Yeah.
like all just falls to pieces.
Yeah, well, apparently it's constructed with like half of an explosive material where the other half is water.
Yeah.
And the minute the two touch, they explode. So I guess half the trick is just getting it to where
It's like paper mache with C4.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
I guess so. Molding clay or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you're going to get wet with this week's Shea Challenge. Before we leave you, Nas has a question.
Okay, so back by popular demand from Death Saber, we have a question for everybody. Whenever you get the game, let's say you had to reinstall, how do you change your key bindings? What do you change them to?
Right, because remember I had talked about changing throttle up and throttle down.
Yeah, so what do
jetpack.
Do you change your key bindings, and what do you change them to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would like to know what kind of what changes do you make with key bindings, and also tell us why. Why do you do that?
Yeah, just to make it more convenient, or just make it more difficult, I guess.
There you go. Okay, so our question of the week: key bindings. Well, that wraps it up for episode 25, Homer to Your Mobile, which you understand now.
Yeah.
We want to thank our listeners. As always, we wouldn't be here without you. Thank you so much. Our regular contributors, DK, Dark Mushroom, and Shea Byram. And special thanks to Askelon, who, as we talked about earlier, posted episodes of this podcast to YouTube.
We also want to thank Squad. Thank you for the game.
Thank you.
And we want to thank the KSP and Kerbal Academy subreddit moderators. And all the music you've heard is by Professor Soap. You can find him at facebook.com/Professor Soap.
And you can always contact us, kerbalpodcast@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Twitter at KerbalCast.
And subscribe to us on iTunes or download episodes directly from kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com. And for the very first time, we can say this.
Look for us on YouTube. Just search for Kerbal Podcast.
Until next time, I'm your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, our CMP, Command Module Pilot
Nostromo. Happy Kerbaling!
Thanks for sticking around. It's time for After the Credits.
And it is After the Credits, or as Nos likes to call it,
Kerbal After Dark.
Kerbal After Dark. We have a little bit of space history, but before we get to this, I did want to mention we have not done After the Credits for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
2 reasons. One, we didn't really have much to talk about.
And we said if we didn't have anything to talk about, we wouldn't talk about anything.
Yeah.
So we did.
And so we did. And the other thing is, as we mentioned earlier, NASA's work schedule has been such
atrocious.
Yeah. that we have literally recorded each week's podcast, the last two, in the break between his shifts.
Yeah, like we had like an hour and a half window that we're like, okay, we need to, an hour and a half, 2 hours or something.
By the way, I just hit the mic. Did you
Oh,
hear?
hey.
Yeah.
The after the credits mic hit.
The after the credits mic hit. The Kerbal After Dark mic hit. But don't ever doubt NASA's commitment to the podcast. He could have just gone home and kicked back and, had some dinner and whatever, but no. He came and did the podcast.
Which really, it's going to make everybody wonder, like, hey, NASA wasn't able to make it. Like, did he die? Because apparently he's shown up here when it hasn't been convenient. So if he can't show up, he's dead.
Oh, boy. Honestly, I should dig out the you remember I told you when I first came up with the idea of the podcast, I recorded a test one just by myself.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, you need a co-host. You need somebody else so badly.
I just livened it up.
Honestly, I should like, I erased it. It actually doesn't exist, but I should like dig that up and play it sometime.
Yeah.
Go like, Nas couldn't make it this week, so here's what you almost got.
See, you have all the recording equipment, so if you can't make it, it's not happening.
Do you know the week after I did that, we would get so many letters saying, please, Nas, don't ever go anywhere. Don't leave us with this guy just by himself.
I don't know. Make it more listens than anything. That'll be my sign to go. Finally, we have 100% of people who know what they're talking about.
Sidekick?
Yeah.
You're my sidekick? Okay, let's get into this. Space history. This week, back in 1967, Surveyor 6 was the sixth lunar lander of the American Unmanned Surveyor Program that reached the surface of the moon. It landed on November the 10th, 1967, and it accomplished all planned objectives, sending back soil sample data, pictures, and video images. The spacecraft was the fourth of the Surveyor series to successfully achieve a soft landing on the moon. It carried a television camera, a small bar magnet attached to one foot pad, and an alpha scattering instrument, as well as the necessary engineering equipment. 7 days later, Surveyor 6 became the first spacecraft to lift off from the moon's surface. It burned its engines for a few seconds and landed about 10 feet away to the west. And I did some digging around, and NASA actually did a newsreel on the Surveyor. And here it is.
Perched atop an Atlas Centaur rocket, Surveyor, loaded with television cameras, is launched at Cape Kennedy. The moon is only 231,000 miles away, a mere 63-hour journey. Surveyor continues its historic path. The target is an incredibly small 2-by-5 mile area which this craft must hit dead center for best results. A man will take precisely the same journey in 1969. The prime objective of this mission, beyond the soft landing accomplishment, is to obtain vital information about the moon's surface, future landing field for an American astronaut. A first try touchdown as light as a feather. A command from Surveyor Control, Pasadena, California, triggers the craft's TV cameras. And now, our American Earth vehicle sends live television pictures back to the globe 250,000 miles away. The moon, the world of the future.
I want to talk like that for the rest of the I want to talk like that for the rest of the podcast.
Welcome to Kerbal Cast, episode 24.
Good
we
Lord.
Just had a mic debacle. That was more than a hit.
Yeah, that was a massive mic hit.
We had a mic wallop that happened right there.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear that because they were talking about the surveyors really blazed the way for the lunar landings because this is something that we don't really understand now because now you did a mic hit. At the time, there was some question as to what the surface of the moon was like. There was actually some consideration that the surface of the moon was just dust, and that anything that landed on it would just sink in.
Yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke actually wrote a novel that took place on the moon that dealt with that very issue, with people, parts of the moon being so loosely packed that people were literally sinking into it.
Yeah.
At the time, they didn't know. They really didn't know what they would find. One of the things, you remember Neil Armstrong, one of the things that he said was he talked about how deep the footpads of the limb were into the lunar surface.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what the Surveyor program figured out was, can it even support weight?
Yeah.
So that was, like I said, that was November 10th, 1967. Also this week in space history, Mariner 10. This was a big week for space probes. This was an American space probe, and it was launched by NASA on September the 3rd, 1973. On March the 29th, 1974, it became the very first spacecraft ever to fly by Mercury. Earlier that year, Mariner 10 also flew past Venus, but it wasn't the first one that did that. That was Mariner 2 back in 1962, and that was the first spacecraft to successfully fly past another planet. The mission objectives were to measure Mercury's environment, atmosphere, surface, and body characteristics, and to make similar investigations of Venus. Mariner 10 ran out of fuel in late March 1975, and it is probably still in orbit around the sun, although its electronics have probably been damaged by the solar radiation. The reason they say that it's likely still in orbit, there is a very slim chance that some kind of orbital debris, a rock or whatever, that there's been some kind of collision or something's knocked it out of orbit and it went tumbling into the sun or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an infinitesimal chance that that has happened. But in all likelihood, Mariner 10
is still just going around the sun.
Is still orbiting the sun and probably will forever.
Yeah.
Did some
crazy?
Research. I know.
It's like, I don't know how much more of a shelf life, humans have.
Right.
But these things that we just launched.
That'll still be out there.
Yeah,
And the other thing is, and this is something we can appreciate playing Kerbal, it is so small that the odds of ever seeing it, like, let's say, 3 or 4 centuries from now, somebody's flying around out there, it's not like that's something they're going to look out the window and see unless it happens to be passing, 2 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
So, chances are it's lost for good.
Yeah.
But I did some research on this as well. I did not find newsreel footage from NASA, but I did find this, and it's about the same length. This is from the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum.
After leaving the gravitational field of Earth, Mariner 10 began its long voyage to Mercury. The spacecraft's flight path was carefully chosen to skim past the planet orbiting between Earth and Mercury, cloud-covered Venus. The Mariner 10 cameras at close range were to show us a startling new Venus, a Venus we couldn't see from Earth. The gravitational field of Venus was used to bend the flight path of Mariner 10 inwards towards Mercury. Then the gravity of the Sun pulled Mariner towards its first encounter with the planet. In March of 1974, Mariner 10 flew past Mercury. These synchronous orbits allowed Mariner 10 to fly past Mercury a second and third time. The path of the first flyby was on the dark side of Mercury. The second encounter sent the spacecraft past the light side of the planet specifically for photography. After another 6-month journey around the Sun, Mariner 10 made its third and final encounter.
And I guess we should say Mariner 10, rest in peace.
Yeah.
I have a question. Since you've been playing Kerbal, when you hear about things like space probes going past planets and do you have a better appreciation now for how difficult that is?
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're talking about something that's unmanned.
Anything that goes into space now, I'm like, oh, God, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. Because we talked a while back. It was like one of the first episodes, about how, you were growing up during the space race, and I was during the shuttle era, and pretty much near the disassembly of the shuttle era. We're just kind of
the rapid disassembly.
Yeah. So all of these things, whenever I was growing up, there were things that it was just part of life. We sent things up into space now and then.
Yeah.
So,
no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. They're professionals. They do that. That's their job. Everybody has a job.
Yeah.
And so now knowing everything that goes into it, for me even to launch one of these weird looking pieces of crap that I send up there, and how much work goes into that. And I'm not even dealing with any of the factors they're dealing with, you know.
Well, when I was doing research on these two space probe missions, you know, part of what I came up with was drawings that showed the solar system, and then it showed the orbital path of it, and it's exactly like map view in the game. Mm-hmm. And it was really something to look at that and go, you know, I play a game that simulates that, but you really do get an appreciation for just how difficult.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just leave Earth and just, you know, point in the direction of Venus and end up there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't aim for where Venus is. You aim for where it's going to be.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of this week in space history. You have something that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it was something I just recently came across. And so, you know, it's space related. So I figured I might as well throw into it. I was going to talk about art,
Okay.
You know, science fiction art or, you know, space related art.
Okay.
So I brought them up on the computer there. I'm going to have you look at them fully. I gave you like a short tour of them.
Right.
But I was going to show you two of them.
Lots of naked people.
No, well, we'll get to that one in a second. So we'll save that one
Oh,
for
this
last.
is the... Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead and click up the other one.
Did you notice what I fixated on immediately?
Exactly.
Naked people. Okay, what am I looking for?
You're looking for Will the Art Man. Okay, so you can find him on DeviantArt, WILL, the Art Man, one word. It's a user profile.
Okay.
So do you have it?
I have it.
Okay, now click on Gallery. Because what he does a lot of like oil paintings and fantasy stuff. You'll see a lot of fantasy stuff in there. But if you look at the left side, you'll see reverse. Click those. Okay, so I was just really drawn to this stuff. I actually know this artist and actually worked selling...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I actually worked selling some of his pieces. Okay, so...
By the way, for everyone who's listening, the website we're on is deviantart.com.
Yeah. So the thing you'll notice about those pictures is they have some sort of silhouette that's in black, and then they have all the colors around it. So this is going to be a hard one to do after the credits on because this is very visual, but that's why I described how to find it. So
right.
There you go, guys. So if you're looking at it now, it's actually done reverse glass. So you see that black silhouette, that was painted on the back of a piece of glass, and everything that's on there was painted on top of that. So it's painted from the foreground going out.
Oh,
like layered on top.
Okay, I see what. Okay,
now,
so he painted the silhouette on one side of the glass, then flipped it over and painted everything else.
No, he painted the silhouette. So you have the pane of glass.
Right.
One side of it's completely just glass.
Uh-huh.
The other side is all of the paint.
Oh, okay.
So painted the silhouette on, and then put the next layer and next layer and next layer until you ended up with that piece. So if you look at any of those, yeah, it's painted. You know. The way we joke about it is, you know, you have to think as backwards as the artist in order to get it.
I was gonna say,
yeah. So they look
wow.
Just seeing pictures like that, they look really good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that I was bringing it up space wise is the way if you look at the planets,
right?
You know, they just have a really good color to them and everything. Seeing it in person is completely different because it's on that glass, and so the colors they just pop. It's insane.
Yeah, there's a lot of planets in the background in these.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. To me, I just think it looks great. So I actually have, I'll be getting a piece done by him pretty soon, and it's going to go into the house I'm moving in.
Cool.
The other one, this one is ghost.net, GHOSTE.net. Got it?
Okay. Yeah, okay, I'm there.
Okay. So this one, he's actually a member of the Something Awful forums is how I found him. And he hit a point where, if I remember the story...
I like this art style.
Yeah, he was on dire straits as far as finances go, and he had a few art pieces, and he put them up, and the Something Awful goons, they went nuts for him, so they bought him up, and it actually helped him out quite a bit.
You know, the other art looks like paintings.
Yeah.
This looks like something you'd get in a comic book or a graphic novel.
Yeah. So... the other ones, they were just kind of like had a planetary look to them. These actually all carry a theme, and it's the set of art that he's doing is called Bodies in Space, and it's what would happen. He basically takes what would happen if your spacesuit opened up while you were, you know, on a spacewalk, like out in space, and instead of like just basically doing it as one thing, there's multiple different multiple different images, and each one shows a different thing that would happen to you. Which one are you looking at?
Okay, this guy just went up about 400 notches in my book. He did a cover, and it looks like a cover for a comic book.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen a movie called Manos Hands
No,
of Fate?
I've heard of Manos Hands of Fate. Though.
He did a comic book cover for that movie, and the brides of Manos is in the background, and the caretaker.
Oh yeah, that's the shape of a giant hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, the bodies in space line that he does.
Manos, the Hands of Fate.
So they'll do like one that's micrometeoroids, and what's actually cool is if you order it from his site, the ghoste.net, Ghost,
right.
And the artist is Nathan Host. If you order off of his site, they're on this amazing like quality print paper. Like
right.
if you order prints, and it actually comes with a card that says what the thing is that painting is about. So it was just another artist that like I just recently got some of his stuff in, and it just looks great. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him too.
Just the Manos, the caretaker's name was Torgo.
You're still hooked on the Manos thing.
Yeah, well, that if you've ever seen that movie, I mean, worst movie ever made.
Yeah.
That's one of those phrases that we toss around a lot.
Uh-huh.
It applies.
Yeah.
Okay. Plan 9 from Outer Space is like Gone with the Wind compared to Manos, the Hands of Fate. I strongly recommend watch the Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Okay, yeah. If that's on there as an option, then it's not that great of a movie.
Because honestly, that's the only way to get through that movie. If you actually tried to watch that movie straight,
yeah,
you would probably be like tying a noose about halfway through it because you couldn't take it.
Okay,
let me put it this way: worse than Armageddon.
Yeah. So those are just two artists that I have had pieces. I'm either having a piece done by them or I have ordered pieces by. So
if you want to look at what we're talking about, folks, deviantart.com, and the other website is Ghost, GHOSTE.net.
Yeah.
And the pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, the user you're looking for on DeviantArt is Will the Art Man, which is
all
just
one word.
All one word. So that's all the kind of art stuff that I've been doing.
Well, we wrap it up now for after the credits, and I said that if you stuck around to the bitter end, I had something for you. Well, here it is. This is what I'm going to leave you with.
I have so much fame. I'm richer than Bruce Wayne. My life is so great. I just can't keep a date. But it's not enough for me to be queen of country. I need more love and acclaim. 'Cause I am insane. I'll make pop music that's triumphant and useless, and use my dumb cuteness to expand my fan base to a bigger size. I just want the whole wide world to love take place. That's why I'm desperately trying to relate to every race that you sing of all these ways. Make it stop, make it stop. I have absolutely no rhythm, it's sad. When I dance it look like a paralyzed rat, hypnotizing you is sad, oh that you can. Turn it off, turn it off.
Hey, hey, hey! You didn't think this god-awful pandering sellout song and video could get any worse, did you? Well, guess what? Now you have to listen to me round.
It's going according to plan. I have my revenge on the haters who hate my new army, and some fans will obey my commands. Kill my haters and the jerks I used to date.
I don't care if it's the VMAs. I'm not jumping off of there. There's all kinds of people getting bitten by snakes. It's dangerous. Oh, God. 1 second. Okay.